You are the blank page on which the stories appear. The stories are loud, the page is silent. When you identify with the story, there is suffering. When you realize you are the page, there is silence. The story is always dramatic. It says, I was insulted, I was rejected, I must become somebody. I am behind, I am healing, I am improving, I am suffering. The story is movement, the story is noise, the story is time. And because the story is loud, you mistake it for reality. But notice something carefully. Before every thought, you are there. Before every fear, you are there. Before every identity, you are there. The page exists before the novel. The screen exists before the movie. The sky exists before the storm. The story cannot exist without you, but you exist perfectly without the story. This is what is being pointed to. Not philosophically, not spiritually, directly. Right now, a thought may arise. Am I wasting my life? Will I become successful? What about women? What about money? What about enlightenment? The mind immediately grabs the thought and says, this is me. That single identification creates suffering. Because now the nervous system enters the movie. Now the body contracts. Now desire, fear, comparison, craving, ambition, shame all begin orbiting around a fictional center called me. But look deeper. A thought appears, then disappears. Another appears, then disappears. Moods disappear. Identities disappear. Even your personality changes across years. Yet something has remained untouched through all of it. That silence noticing, that open space in which the entire human experience is happening, that is the page. The page is never burned by the fire written on it. A horror novel cannot wound the paper. A love story cannot improve the paper. The page allows all stories, yet remains unstained. Your suffering comes from forgetting the page and becoming hypnotized by the ink. This is why silence feels frightening at first. Because silence threatens the storyteller. The storyteller survives through constant narration. What next? Who am I? How do I win? How do I become greater? How do I fix myself? But in silence, the storyteller weakens. And suddenly there is no problem, only life happening. Bird sounds, breathing, walking, wind, typing, existence. Simple, direct, unfragmented. The mind says, but if I stop identifying with the story, won't I lose ambition? No. Action still happens. You may still build companies, lift weights, make money, love deeply, run fast, sell brilliantly. But now it comes from clarity, not psychological desperation. A silent man can build an empire, but he is not trying to become somebody through it. That difference changes everything. The ego works like this. I must become valuable so I can finally feel complete. Silence sees completeness was never missing, only covered by noise. The page does not need the story to be worthy. And the deepest trap is this. The mind will now turn even this into another story. I am becoming awakened. I am detached. I understand non-duality. I am now the page. Again, the storyteller has returned wearing spiritual clothes. The page never announces itself. It is simply here, silent, prior to thought, unaffected, like the sky behind weather. There was once a man who spent his entire life inside a book. Every morning, he woke inside a new chapter. Some chapters were called success, some loneliness, some desire, some failure, some love, some becoming. And each chapter felt unbearably real. When the story said, you are behind, he suffered. When it said, you are admired, he felt alive. When it whispered, you may lose her, his chest tightened. When it promised one more achievement and you will finally arrive, he ran faster. The book controlled the climate of his entire inner world. A single sentence could ruin his day. A single memory could destroy his sleep. A single imagined future could fill him with anxiety. And so he became a servant to the story. He polished identities like medals. The disciplined man, the spiritual man, the successful man, the attractive man, the wounded man. He kept changing costumes, never realizing they all belonged to the same actor. Then one evening, after years of chasing salvation through improvement, the man grew tired. Not physically, existentially, tired of repairing himself, tired of becoming, tired of carrying the unbearable weight of me. So he sat silently. No phone, no music, no self help, no distraction. And for the first time in years, he did not enter the story. He simply watched. A thought appeared. Your life is incomplete, then disappeared. Another arose. You are wasting time, then disappeared. Another. You must become extraordinary, gone again. He watched fears come like storms. He watched desires rise like fire. He watched memories parade through the mind like ghosts demanding worship. And suddenly, something shattered. Not the mind, the identification with it. Because he saw something terrifyingly simple. The stories were appearing to him, but they were not him. Just as clouds moved across the sky, the stories moved across awareness. Just as waves rise and fall upon the ocean, thoughts rose and fell upon silence. Then came the great realization. He was never the story, he was the page on which heartbreak was written, the page on which ambition was written, the page on which fear was written, the page on which enlightenment itself was written, and the page had remained untouched through all of it. A war story cannot burn the paper, a love poem cannot improve it, a tragedy cannot wound it. The page allows every story, yet remains clean. At that moment, the man laughed, not because life had become perfect, but because he finally saw the trick. The mind had spent decades convincing him that he was a character inside the book, a fragile little figure fighting for survival, importance, validation, completion. But he was never the character. He was the silent space in which the entire novel appeared. And from then on, life still happened. He still worked, still lifted weights, still desired, still built, still failed, still won. But something fundamental had changed. The stories no longer imprisoned him, because now he knew the story is loud, but the page is silent, and silence cannot suffer. And perhaps that is the entire spiritual journey. Not becoming pure, not becoming enlightened, not becoming superior, not becoming better, but simply seeing with devastating clarity that you were never the noise to begin with. You were the silence beneath it. The mind will continue writing stories. That is its nature. Some stories will be beautiful, some terrifying, some seductive, some painful. Let them come. A page does not resist the ink. The suffering begins only when the page forgets itself and starts believing it is the sentence written upon it. Then every insult becomes a wound, every rejection becomes death, every desire becomes slavery, every fear becomes truth. But when the page remembers itself, something extraordinary happens. The story loses their power to imprison. And in that silence, for the first time, life is no longer something you are trying to survive. It becomes something you simply witness, like rain touching a window, like wind moving through trees, like clouds drifting across an endless sky, quietly, completely, without resistance. And perhaps peace was never something to achieve. Perhaps peace was simply what remained when you stopped mistaking yourself for the story.